couple different ways that you can glue segments up. If you have really tight fitting rings without any gaps, you can just do like I'm going to do now and use a piece of string, because the segments don't need to be like clamped tight, because the actual structure of the final glue up is when you glue all the rings together. End grain gluing isn't really all that structurally sound. So I'm just applying glue to one side of each segment. Not really worrying about pushing the segments together yet until I get glue applied on all of them. And I'm just using a tight bond glue, but there's a lot of different wood glues out there. Alright, so now that I have glue applied to all my segments, I just want to start putting them together. You want to work a little bit fast because you don't want to have the glue start to set up before you get all the segments pulled tight together. Okay, everything's relatively lined up, so now we're going to grab a piece of string, and I just got a little 3/4 by 3/4 block of wood with a hole drilled through the center of it that I use so I can pull it tight, and a little plastic spring clip which applies enough pressure to hold the string from slipping. So I pull it a little bit tight, make sure all my segments are lined up now. I'm just going to pull it close to the edge so that I can really give it a little last tweak, make sure everything is nice tight to the table. You always want to work on a flat surface when you're doing this too. Alright, so we're just going to let that sit for a while so that the glue dries, and then we'll be done with that segment. Alright, so another way to clamp your rings together is just by using a worm screw hose clamp. So I'm going to do the same steps where I'm going to just apply a little bit of glue to one side of each segment. Okay, so the glue's all applied. We'll start shrinking the segment in to get everything all lined up. Then I'm going to take my hose clamp and lasso it around. They got a slot on them, but I prefer to use a socket. Makes it a little bit easier. So it's snug, so we're going to got to reposition the worm drive on this clamp. It's a little bit in the way. Make sure everything is lined up and that everything is pressed down flat. And let's give a few more. Okay. So that rings together. So we're just going to set this one aside and let this one let the glue dry on that one too. Alright, so the last way that you can glue your rings up is with a slip or a friction joint. So if you have a segment where the pieces aren't exactly lining up 100%, you can build it in pieces and then do minor sanding to some of the joints to make the segment line up tight. So what you're going to want to do is, I would say for 16, just work in 4 segments at a time. So all you do is put glue on one side and then rub the joint back and forth a few times. And actually the suction from the glue is going to hold the joint together good enough that it'll glue together with a tight joint. So what you're going to do is you're going to do 4 at a time for this. And then that's enough for that one. And then we're going to come and we're going to do another 4. And then once all these joints dry, we'll come and we'll start gluing the sets of 4 together. Okay, so I have my 4/4 of the ring glued together, so I'm just going to let the glue set up on this, and then we will come back and we'll glue each quarter into 2 halves, and then we'll be able to make any adjustments to get the final glue up together. So now that I have my 4/4 glued together, the next thing I need to do is glue them into halves. So I'm just going to apply some glue on 2 sides and then just do another rub joint. Make sure it's lined together and nice and tight, and do the same thing for this side. Now we're going to let those sit and dry, and then we will just do one more glue joint to glue both of those halves together. Now that my 2 halves are all glued up, the next thing I need to do is glue them both together. As you can see, I placed them together. Since I did slip or friction joints, I got a little bit of a gap on this side that I need to correct, and we're going to do that with a sheet of sandpaper. So this is just a 100 grit sheet of sandpaper, and all I'm going to do is on a flat surface. Just carefully slide it back and forth, making sure that it's sitting flat on the paper. So we're almost there, just a little bit more, and then that side will be done. And all I'm doing is I'm setting it on top of my flat surface and just making sure that there's no gaps in between. Okay, now I'm just going to do the other side. Alright, let's test fit and see where we got. Alright, so now that I have it all lined up, I just need to do one last glue up. And we're going to do the same thing, just put them together and rub back and forth. Alright, so we just gotta let that glue dry, and then that last ring is all assembled.